I've been covering this for the last couple of days. What is a healthy mind? So I went and asked Google. So you type into Google, what is a healthy mind? And there is no guidance for a healthy mind. There's only, if you feel that you're suffering from mental illness, come to us. That's because our culture doesn't understand what a healthy mind is. And the reason the culture doesn't understand what the healthy mind is because we've actually gone, this sunk in the other day, hit me like a bolt of realization. We've gone from the mind being simply a source of sin, which is how the church has basically perceived it. If you go back and read Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, which was like the bestseller for about 150 years, gives you insight into the Protestant mind. It's a battle between the will to Christian purity against all of these psychological defects, greed and lust and shame and anger and so on and so forth. So the mind's a battleground fighting against all of these dark forces. And then you've gone from that, and there's the concept of mental illness defines mental health. And one of the reasons that that's happened is because we're not comfortable with the mind. It isn't even mentioned at school. I know that some schools are doing things like mindfulness, but they're just pussyfooting around it with a couple of meditations. Which is better than nothing. Getting kids to meditate, you're helping them to understand their own mind. But where does the guidance come from if it gets sticky? And it does get sticky. It will always get sticky. Such is the nature of the mind. But that's just the monkey mind. That isn't dark forces. It's the monkey mind. And the mind's not going to gobble you up and destroy you if you become familiar and comfortable enough with it. Just like, let's say that you're sharing this room with a monkey. Once you get to know the monkey and the monkey gets to know you, it will share the banana. They do this. There's this concept that all of nature is about competition and destroying your competition so that you can gain whatever it is that you're competing over. Life in nature is nasty, brutish and short and so on and so forth. And this is just an ancient philosophical concept that has no bearing on reality. Because if you look around you, all you see is collaboration. Yeah. The plants, the human beings, we're collaborating, we were, until we stepped out of line, on curating our environment. And we can do that with anyone and with anything. We can, if we choose to do so, find a way to collaborate with almost every being on the planet. What this is all uncovering, exposing, is that we're not comfortable enough and familiar enough with our own minds to speak about them. What sets me apart is simply the amount of time that I've spent understanding my mind, and the other thing is the amount of time I've spent speaking about the mind and learning about other people's minds and learning about my mind and explaining it. So I know what a healthy mind is. My students tell me. I get statistics from people about why they do the training they do. And this is the order. Calmness. That's number one. When people start learning to meditate, they want their minds to be calm. They want to be able to, ideally, in an ideal world, silence the mind. And if not, to cause it to not be so intense. That's the first thing, calmness. Then is focus. You go through the day and you haven't spent any time focusing on anything that actually directly benefits you. It's all for the future, so that in the future I'll have the thing that I need that I can't have now because I can't focus on it. And the world is full of people waiting until their retirement to do the things that they could do now. We need to make provision for the future, and we need to be prudent and so on and so forth, and I understand all of that. But what that means is that limits the amount of time that you have to work with your mind. It doesn't destroy it completely. So it's not a satisfactory trade-off to say, right, I'll just ignore the mind. If it gets out the way, I'll have a couple of glasses of wine and watch the TV or do whatever it is you do. Whereas actually, now's the opportunity to get familiar and comfortable with it through all the infinite number of practices. You can find the ones that work for you. And what you're able to do then is look back and see what progress you've made. Is your mind calmer? Are you more focused? And the third thing is relaxation. Is it calmness, focus, relaxation? So I don't know what a healthy mind is. If my students hadn't filled in all of these forms over the course of the last 8 years, and I hadn't read them and I hadn't collated them, I wouldn't know this. Yeah? What do you want in the world? I want calmness, I want focus, I want relaxation. And the relaxation isn't just a relaxation of the body, although that says it all. What they actually want is to connect to their body to the point where they can relax. So I want to turn off the stress in my body. And then comes mindfulness and meditation, and largely that's out of curiosity. So a healthy mind isn't always calm, but you can find calmness, and if you can't find it now, you know when you'll be able to find it. A healthy mind is capable of focus. You're going to find yourself on autopilot a lot of the time, but from time to time, you'll be aware that you're on autopilot. This is what mindfulness is. You notice that, and you're able to bring your attention to those elements of your life that are there for your well-being and happiness, and the well-being and happiness of those around you. And then there's relaxation, which is all about stress and the mind-body connection. And then there's mindfulness and meditation and delving into the inner nature of the mind and so on, and all of the things that at one point directed all of my practices. So that is my recipe for a healthy mind, is those practices that bring the mind calmness, focus, relaxation, and mindfulness. And that's what I teach, and that's what I'm directed by. Those are the priorities that I serve, and the world is working against me, so I feel like King Canute. And it's actively, I can pick up a newspaper and get a highlighter out and highlight every paragraph that is seeking to destroy your happiness, followed by your calmness. Newspapers do not want your calmness, right? They want the opposite. The TV, the internet, all of the narrative, the whole thing is seeking to destroy your happiness overall. Then your, because a happy person never picks up a newspaper. Happiness overall, calmness, focus, relaxation, mindfulness. So the newspapers, the TV, I haven't watched a night's television since 1996. Might be 97. It's a fact. So it's an addiction that I've managed to overcome. I've also managed to overcome the addiction for the viral news feeds, which is harder. I covered this last week. Okay, so that's what a healthy mind is. Calmness, focus, relaxation, mindfulness, happiness. Happiness, according to the Dalai Lama, can't disagree for a moment, is gaining fulfillment from neutral experiences. If you can't calm your mind, you're never going to gain fulfillment from a neutral experience, because your mind's going to intervene in it. Neutral experience, example, standing at the bus stop waiting for a bus in the rain, although it's a bus shelter. Because if you were getting soaked, it wouldn't be a neutral experience. But there you are in the rain, so you can't go wandering around. You don't know how long the bus is going to be. That's a pretty neutral experience. Say you're there for an hour, what's your mind going to do? What we want is we want the tools to make that a fulfilling experience. Because the beauty of the sound of the rain on the roof of the bus shelter and the colours as the water hits the puddles and the lights and the smell and the sound and the wind and the occasional drop of water is actually a beautiful experience. But the mind intervenes. So these are like the 4 pillars, the meditation superpowers, 4 pillars of meditation. They're the things that, as you build the house of your meditation, they're what grow. And progress isn't linear. It's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and you can only notice it if you look back in time. Just like walking up a mountain which is forested and you can't see how far you've come until there's a gap in the trees and you look at it and you think, oh wow, look how far I've come. For those of you that meditate regularly, bring your mind to your pre-meditation days. In mine, I was totally unconscious. I was just on autopilot all the time. It's just a different sort of autopilot. I moved from one autopilot to another. So here's a way out of the autopilot. It's the sound of the bell moving through time, which we can follow. In the same way that we can follow everything else. But we tend not to. And so that's what we do, of course, when we're waiting at the bus stop in the rain, is to notice the sound of the rain moving through time. And notice the movement of the belly, rising and falling. Notice Robert's voice moving through time, and your breath also moving through time, noticing the entire in-breath, following it like you were following the sound of the bell through time. and the entire out breath. And following the cycle of the breath rising and falling. And the coolness and warmth of the breath as it enters and leaves the nostrils. And connecting to the body, allowing your body to release tension on the out breath. So we're releasing the tension. You can make that your mantra, noticing the breath rising and falling. As you breathe out, release the tension. Repeat in your mind, releasing, releasing. On the out breath. And in this meditation you have all of these things. It's the most frictionless practice, noticing the sound of the bell, or noticing the movement of the breath in the belly. It brings calmness. It's a succession of focused attention practices. We're focusing our attention on the sound of the bell, focusing our attention on the movement of the belly, focusing our attention on the body as we breathe out, which is also helping us to learn to relax. Relax the body, release the tension from the body. And all of these added up are a mindfulness exercise. It's the practice of being present, of noticing the tiny little vanishing point of the present moment. That is so small, so short that there is nothing in it. In a neutral experience, there's nothing in a third of a second. Just more of whatever the background experience is. So we're using that background experience to focus very finely on a neutral experience. And then all of the other things, fears, doubts, shames, worries, concerns, problems, difficulties, unsatisfactoriness, all of the what we call positive experiences of the modern world, many of which are just comfort and pleasure, they're not in there. So as Thich Nhat Hanh says, it's freedom in the present moment. Among other things, it's freedom from the narrative of our minds that we've adopted from our interactions. Different cultures, different narratives, but there is always a narrative. But it's not in the breath. It's not in the movement of sound through time. Here are some levels of narrative. Dreams. Dreams may have no relation. The narrative in a dream may have no relation to our lives other than some crossover between emotions. The emotions we experience in the dream and the emotions we experience in our day. There may be similarity there. Other than that, it's not a real experience. And then there's the waking out of sleep and drifting into sleep, hypnagogic state, where the narrative has less bounds. It's the narrative of the mind, but it's drifting towards the narrative of dreams. Dreams no basis in reality often. The present moment, a reiteration of our view of reality, which we may not share with anyone in the entire universe, unique to us. And there are a lot of states in between this. And then there's awareness. There's awareness of the narrative, of the process that's happening. What we need to be able to do is to elevate ourselves out of these other states sometimes. The draw of the imaginary narrative of the unsatisfactory future. The power of it. essentially fear. So we need to elevate our awareness so we can perceive the fear, and rather than be what is driven by the fear. Doesn't matter what the fear is. It's there for almost everybody. When our mind drifts down out of awareness. So bringing ourselves to awareness, the way to do that is with a breathing practice. And the breathing practice to use is the 226 breathing practice. So what we do there is breathe in 2 parts on the in-breath. That takes 2 seconds. We hold it for 2 seconds and then breathe out smoothly for 6. And so if you look at all of these states of mind as a ladder, initiating this practice will move you up 1 step on the ladder. So the 2-part in-breath doesn't work for everyone. If it's uncomfortable for you, you do 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. 2 in-breaths, hold it for 2 seconds, out for 6. In for 2, hold it for 2, out for 6. 2 in-breaths, hold it for 2, out for 6. And then just back to noticing time passing through the present moment by noticing the belly rising and falling. Just leave the body to choose the cycle of the breath. And we can make this a very light touch experience. So if the awareness is like a flashlight, we can turn it on fully and immerse ourselves in all of the sensory experience of the breath, or we can just be aware of it. It's almost like stepping back. And throughout this process, we're being mindful that there are thoughts arising. So in the same way we're noticing the breath, we're also noticing thoughts. And the thoughts need to be acknowledged. And the way we can do that is by noting the thoughts when they arise. So we're noticing the breath very gently, very softly. And when thoughts arise, we can acknowledge it by saying thinking, thinking in the mind. So we can just repeat the words, thinking, thinking, or we can do that over 2 out-breaths. First out-breath, thinking. Second out-breath, thinking. And then back to the breath. Aware of the breath, but also aware of thought, waiting for thoughts to arise. And noting thoughts on the out-breath, thinking, thinking. So we're witnessing the present moment, witnessing the breath, witnessing the passage of sound, the passage of time, and the cycle of thought. The softness and gentleness of the focus irrespective of how intensive the thoughts are, is what creates the quality of the meditation. So there's an element of waiting for thought to arise so that you can note it. And there's no judgment on the mind because it's not possible to judge it. We're witnessing the cycle and repetitive nature of thoughts, not translating the content. So the only possible judgment is that thoughts keep arising, but that's what happens. It's like clouds move across the sky and water flows downhill, thoughts arise. And so when you go for a walk in nature, you're seeing these cycles: trees, birds, flowers, insects, water, and clouds, and sun. When we're noticing the mind, we're noticing sensations, we're noticing thoughts. And so as long as we come back to the place of witnessing, of observation of the mind, what we're doing is stepping out of the narrative, which is what its power is the meaning behind the words. And what we're doing is observing the words and not being drawn into the meaning. And you can notice that by slowing your narrative down. So let's say there's a critic. It's now saying this You're noticing the sound, and the present moment moving is noticing passage of time, not noticing the passage of time. Good. Noticing the word arising. We don't want to necessarily redirect the mind to this is good. We want to let it have its say. And if we want to rebalance, metta bhavana. May I be well. May I be happy. May I find peace of mind. May I be well. May I be happy. May I find peace of mind. Noticing the movement of sound and the breath and the passage of thoughts and time and all of the sensations of the present moment. Gently return your attention to your surroundings. Okay. So there we go. Well, that's a I mean, that has all of the ingredients, and it's a strategy, but one of the many strategies for the mind. You can have a strategy of mantra. Basically, what you're doing is drowning out the narrative. This is the most useful and the most frictionless if you're able to work with it. And there's many other strategies. This is light, very light focus on the present moment, and noticing that that's an element of all of these processes, inner processes, thoughts, emotions, all the sensory experience of now. And helps you drift off to sleep as well.